First up, the Home Secretary. Who'd want to be Home Secretary? The woman currently in the job is the Maidenhead MP, Theresa May. She's been booed and urged to resign and subjected to hostile questions today. It all came from the angry Police Federation delegates at their conference in Bournemouth. She delivered her speech in front of a large sign that read, "Cutting police by 20% is criminal," and some members held up placards saying, "Enough is enough." Theresa May admitted the changes were challenging and tough decisions that had to be made, but she reassured police they were not being singled out. Earlier, she spoke to the BBC's James Lansdale and told him that she didn't believe she'd lost the support of the service.
Well, I believe that what we should be doing as a government is what we are doing, which is, on the financial side, doing what's right for the country in terms of dealing with the deficit. That's why we have to put through cuts in police budgets, and those cuts are challenging, but they are affordable, they are manageable, as we're seeing from forces up and down the country.
Those are unreasonable, they're unfair, and those cuts are putting the public safety at risk.
You know, what we see up and down the country is forces responding to those cuts, but crucially, in some areas, they're transforming the way they do policing. But what we're also doing as a government is ensuring that police officers have less bureaucracy to deal with, so less time spent in the station filling in forms, more time out on the streets, that they're able to exercise more discretion for more cases of how whether people are charged.
Changes to red tape are one thing, but how can you guarantee public safety when potentially as many as 16,000 police officers are going to be cut by the end of this Parliament?
Well, you say changes to red tape are one thing. What changes to red tape do is actually give the police more time to be out on the streets. That's where the public want to see them, and it gives the police more time to be doing the job that they want to be doing in terms of protecting the public and fighting crime, rather than just filling in the forms. So these are changes the government is making that will actively help police officers to do the job that they and the public want them to be doing.
Were you embarrassed to speak on a platform that said 20% cuts are criminal?
It's not a view that I agree with. It's the view that the Police Federation has put forward. I don't agree with that. I think the cuts in government funding we're putting through are challenging, but they are affordable.
Well, Sarah is a police detective. She asked us to change her name. Sarah, evening to you.
Hello, good evening.
Morale at the station today, how has it been?
Oh, it's pretty abysmal at the moment. We had a particularly good day out last week for the march in London, which raised morale quite considerably, I have to say, for having the opportunity to do and say something publicly. But today, having heard so much that's come from conference this afternoon, has really put people back into something of a poor mood once again.
What happens is this affects you not only sort of privately, personally, when it comes to your finances, but also day-to-day professionally as well. So what sort of things are concerning you, especially when it comes to day-to-day work, about the resources that are to hand, and how will they be affected if these cuts go through? There
are two key points to what we're seeing on a day-to-day basis. Firstly, the sheer numbers are dropping as colleagues are retiring. Obviously, in the 80s, we had a bit of a surge of the numbers of police officers that were employed. Majority of them are now coming up for retirement. As they're going out the door, they're simply not being replaced, so we don't have anybody coming in behind them. This is obviously one of the means of reducing police officer numbers without resorting to redundancies or sackings. But equally, without the numbers of bobbies that we're losing, we're also losing resources. I understand the point about removing backroom staff and trying to encourage us to be more streamlined, but the fact remains, if you take 2 administrative assistants out of an office at 40 hours a week each, that's 80 hours a week administrative work that the police officers then have to pick up and replace on their behalf. So we are running out of police officers and we can't just open another box. OK, so all of the comments made by Theresa May about the fact that you'll have less red tape and paperwork to do actually is irrelevant, because actually you're having to do some of the work that was being done in the back office. Absolutely. I heard some of the sound bites from this afternoon. Unfortunately, due to operational commitments, I wasn't able to listen to the full speech from the Home Secretary. However, yes, that's exactly the problem, and that is certainly not going to improve whilst this current situation continues. So the several million hours that they're claiming are being saved with these introductions is quite one thing. However, by the same token, that they sort of fail to understand that by taking away the backroom staff, that is not work that goes away. Court folders still need to be prepared. They're not all done electronically yet. That's only still being rolled out, and it'll be 3 to 4 years before that's completely in place. So we're taking away infrastructure and not yet being able to replace it.
I know when I've had conversations with those in charge of Thames Valley Police, that they are linking with Hampshire Police in various ways, armed response units, those sort of things.
Yes.
Aren't those efficiencies? Aren't that making it more efficient for you to do your job?
Perhaps in some of the roles they are. I can't particularly speak about armed response vehicles. I'm not an armed.
So the IT joining up, things like that, perhaps, when it comes to the actual process of paying you, or those sort of things. Those are ways of making and saving money.
Absolutely. As far as I'm aware, they're quite efficient. We no longer get pay slips. If we want them, we have to print them off from a central server. I expect that probably saves rather a lot of money, actually, on a year-to-year basis. But these are only small savings. We all accept that the police force has to change, that the cuts have to be made. Public sector, we have to take our share. Absolutely. I don't see why we should be ring-fenced. But I think the danger is that we're running to the point now of breaking point, and there always comes a point in anything where the numbers simply become too low to recover. And the concerns that we have is that financially, in terms of police officers available to respond to 999 emergencies, we're coming to breaking point, and I don't know how much further this can go.
Anybody listening to you now would be mildly concerned. You're not scaremongering, are you?
Oh, no, I absolutely not. No, I hope that's certainly not going to be the case. But I just think it's food for thought. And I think people hear us complaining, my wages are being cut, my pension's being cut. But the reality is that's my problem. That is not the public's problem. But
it's still a problem. And I notice you could lose about £7,500 over the next 3 years. That's £7,500.
I've done the mathematics based on the increments I won't get for the next 3 years, because, of course, as the public know, it's a 2-year pay freeze. In actual fact, for me, because I joined in February of the year I joined in, that means I won't actually see a pay rise until February 2015. So for me, it's actually a 3-year pay freeze. So taking into account the increments and also the overpayments I'm now paying on my pensions, instead of paying 11% of my monthly income, I'm now paying 12.5%. As of next year, I'll be paying 14.2%. And taking all of that into account, by my next pay rise in 2015, I will be £7,500 down on where I would have expected to be.
So if Theresa May was here right now, what would you be saying to her? Stick it out or resign?
Oh, that's a hard one. I think, I have to say, from what I've heard of her today, I actually have a little more respect for her today than I did yesterday. She's in a very difficult position. But nevertheless, she's sticking to her guns, and I have a little more respect for somebody who's quite open and makes decisive action than somebody who perhaps waffles, and I have to give her some credit for that today. In terms of sticking it out long term, I don't know how much longer she can hold her position. When you have the entire nation's police force, including our colleagues in Scotland and colleagues in Northern Ireland, saying the Home Secretary is wrong, we can't all be wrong at this end. We can't always be right either, but perhaps there's a middle ground that somebody needs to meet on, and we're not being met midway at all.
Sarah, been a fascinating conversation with you. Thank you very much, and have a safe evening as well.
Thank you, you too.